for a second, a world with absolutely no rules. I mean, none at all. No government, no police, no laws.
Sounds great for about 5 minutes.
Right, total freedom. Until you realize your neighbor, who's a lot bigger than you, really, really likes your car.
And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. No one to call.
Exactly. And that scenario, that specific fear, is something ancient Indian thinkers were completely obsessed with. They even had a name for it.
They did. Matsyanya.
Matsyanya. Say that again?
Matsyanya. It's the law of the fish.
The law of the fish.
It's a metaphor for anarchy.
And
it's brutally simple.
Yeah.
In a pond with no order, the big fish eats the little fish. It's not evil. It's just nature. That's the default state of things.
That is a pretty terrifying place to start our deep dive today. Welcome back, everyone. Today we are swimming away from that chaos and looking at the roots of power. Ancient Indian statecraft.
Yeah, and I think it's important we get past what you sometimes call the kings and dates version of history.
Oh, absolutely. The king so-and-so fought King what's-his-name in this year trap. It's dry and it misses the whole point.
It misses the ideas.
Exactly. So today we are diving into the mindset. How did a civilization go from that primal fear of the law of the fish to building some of the most, truly sophisticated and philosophically grounded empires in history?
And to do that, we're really leaning on the foundational work by Dr. A.S.Altekar.
Yeah.
State and Government in Ancient India. It is sort of the key text for this.
It really is. Because he doesn't just list facts. He's dissecting the political thought using sources that span, almost 2,000 years? From the Rig Veda all the way to things like the A.S.Altekar.
Right. He asks the big questions. What even is a state? Why do we have it? Is the king a god? Or is he just an employee?
That's the one. That's the idea that just floored me. A king as an employee. But before we get to, performance reviews for monarchs, let's start with the basics, the labels. We call it political science today, which sounds a bit sterile.
It sounds like a university department, yeah.
But they had a whole range of names for it, and each one tells a story about how they thought about power.
It really does. The evolution of the terms is the evolution of the thinking. I think the earliest one you see pop up is Raja Dharma.
Okay, let's break that down. Raja is king, right?
It's king, yeah. And Dharma is, that's the $1 million word.
The impossible to translate word.
It's duty, law, righteousness, cosmic order, all rolled into one. So Raja Dharma is basically the duties of the king.
Duties, not powers of the king or perks of the king.
No, that's the critical starting point. It's an ethics-first approach. The science of politics begins with obligation. The king's job is to uphold an existing order, not just to exercise his own will.
So it starts from a moral place, but then as things get more complicated, another term shows up and it sounds a lot more forceful. Dandaniti.
Yes. This is where things get very real.
The science of the stick.
That's a good way to put it. Danda is the rod, the staff, a symbol of punishment, of coercion. So Dandaneti is the science of punishment.
So we've gone from duty to stick. That feels like a significant shift in tone.
It is, but it's not just about brute force. The texts have this almost poetic way of describing Danda. They say it's what keeps the world awake while others sleep.
Wow, that's an image. So the threat of punishment is the only thing holding society together.
That's the argument. Without Danda, without the state's ability to enforce the rules, we slide right back into the law of the fish. People are, naturally prone to selfishness. The rod is what keeps that in check.
But there's a balance, right? I remember reading in Altekar that they were very clear about that.
Oh, absolutely. It's a razor's edge. Use the rod too harshly, and the people are terrified and oppressed. Use it too lightly.
And the king isn't respected, and chaos comes back anyway.
Exactly. So Dandaniti isn't the science of being a tyrant. It's the science of the judicious use of force. It's the realization that high-minded Dharma needs a spine. It needs teeth.
Okay, so we have duty, Rajadharma, we have force, Dandaniti, but then there's the term that most people have probably heard of, Arthasastra.
The big one.
And I always just assumed Artha meant wealth or money, so I thought Arthasastra was just the science of economics.
It's so much more than that, and this is where the thinker Kautilya, who was the advisor to the first Mauryan emperor, really changes the game. He defines Artha not just as money, but as the territory where people live.
Oh, okay, so it's about the land itself.
Land and the people on it. It's the material basis of the state. So Arthasastra becomes the science of acquiring and crucially governing that territory.
So it's statecraft in the most practical sense.
Exactly. It's administration, it's foreign policy, it's espionage, it's infrastructure, and it's economics.
Yeah.
It's a shift from a purely moral or coercive view, to a practical, almost secular science of how to run a state and make it prosper.
It feels like a journey from a priest to a general to a CEO.
That's a fantastic analogy. It mirrors the growing complexity of the state itself. And that brings us to the most fundamental question of all. Where did this state even come from? Was it always there?
This was my favorite part of the reading, the origin stories. Because they don't start with a king on a throne. They start with a golden age.
A kind of utopia, yeah. The texts, like the Mahabharata, describe this primordial time when there was no king, no government, no punishment at all.
And they didn't need it.
They didn't need it. People supposedly protected each other just by following dharma. Everyone spontaneously did the right thing.
Which sounds wonderful. I'm guessing it didn't last.
Of course not. Then comes the fall. Greed, desire, selfishness, all these things creep into human nature. And the moment that happens, people start saying, this is mine.
Private property, the root of all trouble.
Well, in this narrative, yes. The moment you have mine yours, without any rules, you get theft. Then you get violence to protect your stuff, and boom, you're right back in the palm of the big fish.
So the state isn't some divine institution that's always existed. It's a solution. It's a patch for a bug in the human source code.
Perfectly put. It's a reaction to our own flaws. And this is where the philosophy gets really interesting, because the texts propose two very different solutions, two different origin stories for how we fixed it.
And they mirror debates in Western philosophy thousands of years later, which is just incredible.
It really is. So on one hand, you have the divine origin theory.
Okay.
The gods look down, they see this mess, this chaos, and they decide to intervene. The creator god, Brahma, writes a huge book of laws and then appoints the first king, someone like Manu, to go down and enforce it.
So the divine right of kings. The king is God's chosen representative, sent to impose order from the top down. Obey the king because you're obeying God.
That's one version. But then you have this other, much more radical theory, the one that Altekar really emphasizes as being so philosophically significant, the social contract.
This is what I was waiting for. Because when I hear social contract, my brain immediately goes to Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, Enlightenment Europe.
Right. 17th, 18th century.
But you're telling me this was being debated in ancient India.
It's laid out explicitly, especially in the Buddhist text, like the Dighanakaya. It says the people who were just miserable in this state of anarchy, they all gathered together.
A town hall meeting.
A giant one.
Yeah.
And they decided they couldn't go on like this. They needed someone to enforce order, to punish the wicked and protect the good. So they went to the most virtuous and capable person they could find.
And they made him an offer.
They made him a deal. It was a negotiation. They said, look, we will make you our ruler, you protect us, you be the judge. And in return,
I'll give you a cut.
a portion of our rice, usually 1/6. And this is the absolute key. The texts use a specific word for that payment.
Vetana,
Vetana,
which means wage.
a wage, not a tribute, not a divine offering,
A salary.
a salary. And that changes everything. It's not like Hobbes' the Leviathan, where people surrender all their rights to an absolute sovereign to escape chaos. Here, the king is a public servant. He's been hired by the people to do a job.
He's an employee of the state.
He is. And his tax revenue is his paycheck for services rendered, the service being protection.
Which implies, it implies that if he doesn't do the job, he doesn't get paid. Or worse.
Or worse, the contract is conditional. It completely reframes the basis of power. He's not king just because of his divine blood, but because he has a function to perform.
It's just staggering to think about. But let's bring this out of the philosophical clouds and down to the ground. How did this actually develop historically? We didn't just jump from a golden age to a massive empire with a king on a contract.
No, not at all. We had to go way back to the Vedic period. We're talking maybe 2000 to 1000 BC. Society was tribal, it was pastoral.
So lots of cows.
Cows were everything. The sources are so clear on this. The word for a rich man was gomat, which just means owner of cows.
Seriously.
And the word they used for war, gavishti,
Which means,
a search for more cows.
so early warfare was basically just a big cattle raid.
A lot of it was, yes. The king, the Rajan, was essentially a tribal chief. His primary job was to lead the tribe in battle and protect the herd. He wasn't some distant emperor in a palace. He was often elected, or at least his position was confirmed by a tribal assembly, the Sabha or the Samiti.
So it's a very simple, small-scale structure based on family, then clan, then the tribe, the jana.
Precisely. It's all based on kinship. But then there's a huge shift. The texts start talking less about the Jana, the tribe, and more about the Janapada.
And pada means foot, right? A foothold.
Exactly, the foothold of the tribe. This is the moment that nomadic pastoral tribes settle down. They find a piece of land, they start farming, and they claim it. This is our territory.
And identity becomes tied to the land, not just to the bloodline.
That's the crucial transition. And as soon as you have fixed territory, agriculture, and surplus grain, the whole nature of the state has to change. You need more complex administration. You need to defend borders, not just a wandering herd.
A tribal chief isn't going to cut it anymore.
No. This is where you see the evolution from simple kingship to what we might call emperorship. You start seeing these grander titles like Samrat, emperor.
And you get these huge, elaborate state rituals to match. I was reading about the Rajasuya sacrifice.
Oh, the horse sacrifice. Yeah, that was the ultimate power move.
Explain how that worked. It's wild.
So a powerful king who wanted to claim emperorship would consecrate a special horse and then just let it wander for a year.
Just let it go.
Well, his entire army would follow it. And any kingdom that horse wandered into had two choices.
Let me guess. Submit or fight.
Exactly. You either pay tribute and accept the king as your overlord, or you try to stop the horse and face his army. It was a way of physically mapping out your sphere of influence.
My horse grazes here, so this land is mine. It's incredibly assertive.
It is. It's a declaration that I'm not just the king of my tribe anymore. I am the lord of this land. And that sets the stage for the massive territorial empires like the Mauryas.
Now, when we think of those empires, we think of monarchies. One ruler. But one of the most surprising things in Altekar's book was the detailed discussion of republics in ancient India.
It's a part of the history that was forgotten for a long time, but the evidence is overwhelming. They existed. They were called ganas or sanghas.
And they didn't have kings.
No, they were governed by assemblies, by councils of elders from the leading families. The Likavis of Vaisali are probably the most famous example.
And we don't just know this from Indian sources, do we?
That's what's so fascinating. When Alexander the Great came to India in the 4th century BC, the Greek historians who traveled with him wrote about them. They were shocked to find these city-states, like one called Nyasa, that were governed by a senate, not a king.
So Alexander, who comes from the home of democracy, finds republics thriving in the foothills of the Himalayas.
He did, and they put up a really fierce resistance. These republics had a powerful sense of collective identity. We even have texts describing their procedures. They had a system for voting. Yes. They used these little wooden sticks called salakas. They would be different colors for yes and no. And they had an official, the Salakagrahapaka, literally the taker of the little sticks, who would collect them and count the vote.
That's an entire parliamentary procedure. So what happened to them? Why didn't we hear more about them?
Ultimately, the law of the fish applies to states too. The massive centralized monarchical empires like Magadha were just more efficient at waging war.
It's hard to keep a battle plan secret when you have to debate it in an assembly of a few thousand people.
That's precisely the weakness Kautilya identified. He has a whole chapter in the Arthashastra on how to conquer these republics by using spies to sow division and disagreement among the assembly members. The big, efficient monarchy eventually just swallowed the smaller, more deliberative republics.
A familiar story. So let's talk about the anatomy of those big states, because an emperor can't run everything himself, and this is where we get to that Saptanga theory.
The 7 limbs, yes, it's so important. The state isn't seen as a machine or a building. It's seen as a living organism.
With 7 essential parts, or Prakritis.
Right. And if any one of them is weak, the whole body suffers.
Okay, let's walk through them. You've got the king, the svamin, that's the head.
The head of the sovereign, correct. Then you have the amatya, the ministers, the officials, the bureaucracy. They're like the eyes and ears of the state.
And the janapada, we've heard that one before.
The territory and the people. That's the main body, the torso and legs. Without healthy land and a productive population, the state has nothing.
Okay, so head, eyes, body. Then you need defense.
2 kinds. You have the Durga, the fort, that represents your infrastructure, your fortified cities, your defensive capabilities.
Yeah.
And you have the Danda, which in this context means the army, the muscle, the force.
And you have to fund all this.
Which brings us to limb number 6, the Kosa, the treasury. Kautilya is obsessed with the treasury. A king with no money is a weak king who will eventually have to exploit his own people just to survive.
Okay, so that's 6. King, ministers, land, forts, army, treasury. What's the 7th?
The Mitra, the ally.
Your ally. A foreign power is considered a part of your own state.
Isn't that brilliant? It shows an incredible understanding of geopolitics. They knew that a state doesn't exist in a vacuum. Your alliances, your friends on the international stage, are as vital to your health as your own army or your own treasury. If you're isolated, you're weak.
That is an incredibly sophisticated, systems-level way of thinking about a state. It's not just me and my castle. It's this whole interconnected organism.
And this thinking didn't just appear out of nowhere with Kautilya. This is the point Altekar makes really well. We tend to think of Kautilya as this lone genius who invented political science.
The Machiavelli of India.
Right. But if you read the Arthasastra, he is constantly quoting his predecessors. He'll say, the school of Bharadvaja says this, but the school of A.S.Altekar says that. And then he'll give his own opinion.
So he's participating in an ongoing debate.
For centuries, there were entire schools of political thought arguing about tax policy and diplomatic strategy long before the Mauryan Empire even existed. It was a rich, vibrant intellectual tradition.
Which brings us back full circle to that central tension. You have this incredibly complex state machinery. You have powerful emperors who conquered vast territories. And yet you have this core philosophical idea that the king is just a servant, just an employee. How did those two things coexist? Was the king an autocrat or not?
That is the fundamental question, isn't it? On a practical level, a powerful emperor like Chandragupta Maurya had immense power. There was no Supreme Court to declare his edicts unconstitutional. There was no parliament to vote him out of office.
So in reality, he could do whatever he wanted.
In theory, he could. But there are powerful checks on that power. They weren't institutional, they were ideological.
Meaning?
Meaning the king, no matter how powerful, was still considered to be subject to Dharma. He was the upholder of the law, not above it. To violate Dharma was to risk not just political instability, but cosmic chaos. It was a huge psychological barrier.
But what if a king didn't care? What if he was just a tyrant? What was the safety valve, as the book puts it?
The safety valve was the right to revolt.
And the texts are explicit about this.
Oh, shockingly so. The Mahabharata has passages that are just stunningly radical. It says that a king who fails to protect his people, or worse, who actively plunders them through excessive taxation, ceases to be a king.
He breaks the contract.
He breaks the contract. And the text gives him a new title. It calls him a mad dog.
A mad dog.
It says the people are justified in surrounding and killing him, just as they would any mad dog that threatened the village.
Wow. That's not a subtle suggestion. That's a justification for regicide.
It is. It's the ultimate enforcement mechanism for the social contract. Now, did this happen all the time? Probably not. But the fact that this idea was embedded in their most revered texts served as a constant warning to any ruler who was tempted to become a pure autocrat.
It just completely demolishes that old stereotype of the Oriental despot, the all-powerful Eastern king with a population of slaves.
That was always a caricature. The reality was this constant, complex negotiation between the power of the state and the duties of the ruler. The goal of the state wasn't just power for its own sake. The goal was to create a stable society where people could pursue the good life.
So if we look back on this whole journey, we started in the water with the law of the fish, pure chaos.
A war of all against all.
And to escape it, they theorized the state either as a divine intervention or, more radically, as this social contract. And we saw that state evolve from a tiny tribe focused on its cattle
to a vast territorial empire with 7 interconnected limbs managed by a sophisticated bureaucracy.
All while wrestling with this core conflict between the immense power of the ruler and the ideological belief that he was, at heart, a servant of the people.
It's a testament to the fact that the fundamental questions of politics are universal. Liberty versus security, power versus duty. They were asking the same questions in the forests of India 3,000 years ago that we're asking in our own societies today.
It really is. And that brings me to a final thought I want to leave with you, our listener. We live in modern states. We vote, we pay our taxes. But think about that ancient concept for a moment. The tax is a vetana. It's a wage. The politician, the president, the prime minister is an employee.
It really shifts your perspective when you frame it that way.
It does, doesn't it? If we truly, genuinely saw our elected leaders not as masters to be revered or enemies to be hated, but simply as people we have hired to perform a service, the service of protection and good governance, how would that change our politics? Would we demand more accountability? Would we be less focused on personality and more on performance?
It's a profound thought. That the social contract isn't just a historical document, it's a mindset. And maybe the lesson from these ancient thinkers is that power is never a right, it's only ever a trust.
A trust, that's the perfect word for it. Thank you so much for this. This has been fascinating.
My pleasure. It was a great discussion.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next deep dive.